Brexit negotiator of the European Parliament, former Belgian Prime Minister. Does he really believe that Britain and the US are now working together to undermine the EU? I'll ask him, and you can ask him too. The number here is 0345 60 60 973. Good morning on this rainy, drizzly, miserable but wonderful London morning. It's great to be with you. My special guest...
It's like Brussels weather. It's exactly the same.
It's better than Brussels weather, isn't it? Because Brussels has
exactly
the worst weather in Europe.
So,
exactly.
Yeah, that's European unity. So the weather is the same.
But you don't make the weather in Brussels, do you?
No. It's you who are making the weather. It comes from it comes from Britain.
Oh, well, the more the merrier. So you're here with your book, Europe's Last Chance. That's what it's called. It's a pretty punchy title. Do you actually believe that?
I think so. I think that we are in the middle of an existential crisis for Europe and for the European Union especially, and because Europe is surrounded now by a lot of enemies. You have the populism of Trump, supported by Mr. Bannon, who is openly saying, we have to destroy Europe. You have at the other side Vladimir Putin, the autocrat, who says openly that he wants to divide Europe. And at the same time, you have the threat of the political Islam, radicalism, the jihadis, and so on, who are also a threat for Europe. So I think it's an existential moment for Europe, yes.
So Trump is now the enemy of Europe?
Well, he is openly saying that Europe will further disintegrate, and he hopes that there are other countries who are following Britain. So it's a very hostile attitude. That's at least what you can say. So
if we cozy up to Trump, if we invite him on a state visit, the highest honour that the British government can issue a foreign leader, does that make us the enemy too?
No. That not, because we have to negotiate a fair partnership between the UK and the European Union. But
does it make negotiations more difficult for us?
Well, I don't know.
You're
I cannot say
us?
No. In any way, for me, these negotiations are not a question of punishment, not a question of revenge. No, it's about a fair partnership between the UK and between the European Union in the interest, not so much of both organizations or countries, but in the interest of the citizens of the UK and the citizens of the European Union.
But if you're worried about other European countries following down the Brexit route, surely you want to make an example of Britain, don't you?
But it's clear that what we're going to do is, because Theresa May have made it very clear, she wants to go out of the European Union, on the single market, or the customs union, of the European Court Justice, so it's a clear break. And what we're going to not accept is that we create outside the European Union a better status, a better treatment than for the members inside the European Union. That should be suicide to do so, and that it should be the European taxpayers who are paying the bill for that. So that we shall not accept cherry picking, for example, saying to the UK authorities, you go out of all these corporations, but you can pick and choose your own interesting European programs, for example. That will not be accepted by the European side. It's very clear from the beginning.
You're against the cherry picking. The German Chancellor has said many times she's against, I think they call it raisin picking in Germany. Whatever. You're against that. But on the other hand, you have suggested, and I've heard you say this only very recently, that there should be a special arrangement for those British citizens who want to remain in the European Union. Yeah. That's cherry picking from your part, isn't it?
No, I don't think so. It's responding to hundreds, maybe even at this moment already thousands of mails that I'm receiving from UK citizens who are saying, I want to continue my link with Europe. I don't want to lose completely my EU citizenship. And I'm looking to possibilities, what elements of this EU citizenship we can keep on an individual basis.
But how would that work? So give me some practical idea.
No, I'm not entering now in negotiations with you. I'm only saying...
Oh, why not? Come, it's just between the two of us. It won't get beyond you and me and our listeners.
Negotiation doesn't work like that. Openly
okay, but give me some... Come on, but this is one
EU citizenship is what? EU citizenship is mainly that you have consular help when you're in consular aid, when you're in difficulties, for example, when you're traveling outside. That could also also be free travel inside the European Union. That are things that are linked to the EU citizenship. And what I'm looking for, I don't say that this will be ultimately possible. What I'm looking for is, can we not respond positively to these individuals in the UK, British citizens, who are saying, please, 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 let us keep at least some elements of the EU citizenship. And well, we're going to look to that request because I think it's very important that it are not the citizens of the UK who become victim of this new situation and of the Brexit.
So this is in return for money, like a special EU tax that these individuals will pay?
No, I'm not talking
about
that.
Is it like a sort of green cards
that,
program?
No, no, the green card is something different.
Yeah, no,
that's about economic migration. No, it's about the EU citizenship that all UK citizens have today, and the question is what elements of this EU citizenship we could keep for them on an individual basis, so that they are not the victim of this Brexit decision.
If you imagine your Prime Minister Belgium again, if another country that was outside the EU had come along and said, we will offer you Belgium citizens who are unhappy with the EU special access to, I don't know,
yeah, but that's
to the Gulf Cooperation Council or to the US, surely you wouldn't have liked that as Prime Minister Belgium because it's an infringement of your sovereignty.
No, but it's the opposite of what is happening here, because these citizens have now EU citizenship and they lose it because of decision. And their request is, can I keep some elements of it on an individual basis? That's the point. But I doesn't say that we can achieve this, because I am very much in favor of it. But there are also many voices inside the European Union who are saying, no, it's difficult because it's completely linked to the nationality of every citizen. But nevertheless, I want to look to it, because the requests of UK citizens asking to continue to have a link with the European Union are it's so broad, it's so massive. And what is so interesting, maybe it should have been better that I have taken some mails for you so that you can read them. It are all based on emotional elements. It is emotion that plays here.
On both sides of the argument.
It could be, yeah. But from their side, it's emotion. They're saying, we feel European. We are naturally British citizens. We are Englishmen and so on. But we are also part of European culture, of a European tradition, and we want to keep that. And we want not to be cut off from Europe, as it possibly the case with this, and many are under shock still of, I think, the outcome of the referendum. This is not finished. This is not the end of it.
Oh, absolutely. There's lots of things to discuss. I want to get back to the title of your book, Europe's Last Chance. I mean, you refer to the enemies of Europe. Possibly Trump, definitely Putin, Islamic terrorism. To what extent are Europe's wounds self-inflicted? That these were mistakes made by various European governments, by Brussels.
This book is more Eurosceptic than every Eurosceptic book.
It's an act of self-flagellation.
First of all, you have to recognize the weaknesses of your own system before you can change it.
What are the three top mistakes of Europe?
I take one. One is enough.
One is fine.
But still, it is a loose confederation of nation states based on the unanimity rule. That's the point. Yeah. You need, for everything what you do inside the European Union, unanimity of 28 heads of state and government. That cannot work. So the consequence of it is that we are acting always too little, too late. Financial crisis. We are still in the middle of cleaning up our banks, while America has already cleaned up their banks from their side. The same thing is happening on migration or the refugee flows. We create free movement, but we don't have, first of all, a European border and coast guard. You need to start with the European border and coast guard, and then. So why all this is not possible? Well, because you need always, for every little step in the European Union, the approval of 28 heads of state and government. And that doesn't work. So we need to change that. And in the book, what I'm doing, I'm going back in time and saying our founding fathers, and even Winston Churchill is a little bit of founding father of the European Union, because he launched the idea, even when he thought that Britain doesn't fit in that system.
An idea for other people.
Okay. But he launched the idea of the founding fathers together with the other founding fathers of Europe. And they had a clear idea. Defense union, political union, and economic cooperation. That was their idea. And it failed in 1953 because of a negative decision of the French National Assembly. And in the meanwhile, we are explaining to our citizens, well, it is a big success, Europe. No, Europe was not a big success from the beginning. It was, in fact, more or less a failure in the beginning. And we have to achieve this. We have to go back to the fundamental principle to establish a defense union in Europe, at the same time a common market, and then we will be capable to compete with the rest of the world. Otherwise, it will be further disintegration.
To be absolutely clear, Guy Verhofstadt, what you want is a proper United States of Europe. Fiscal union, monetary union, defense union, political union.
Yes, but with a smaller bureaucracy than today. I don't want a commission, for example, of 28 commissioners as it is today. We have not even enough portfolios to give to them. So I want a smaller, real European government with 12, with 15 members, and not more than that.
But I'm talking big picture here. Would you like the United States of America to be replicated in terms of its governmental structure?
You can never
Europe?
replicate. Don't do that.
But something similar, so that we act.
I'm
that
saying
Europe acts as a union.
As a union, politically and certainly also on defense. Because I think in the world of tomorrow, that will be absolutely key. If I hear Mr. Trump saying, I bid on a further disintegration of the union, I don't think that's in the interest of America to have a weak European ally. But this is what he is saying. It's necessary to take our own responsibility also on an issue like defense and to create a defense union next to the political union and the economic.
But are you not whistling in the wind or screaming at the hurricane, or whatever analogy you want to use? Because just at the moment, as you are suggesting that Europe becomes more united, what we are seeing is the reassertion of the nation state, either through left-wing or right-wing populism, as people like to call it.
That's a reading. That's your reading of what is happening.
But the trend is going exactly against what you want.
No, there is naturally a rise of populism and nationalism. That's obvious, and even in the White House apparently, because there is a guy, Bannon, who wants to destroy not only Washington, but apparently also Europe. But at the same time, and that is the new fact that you have to see, the new development, certainly on the continent, you see new politicians coming up. In France, for example, Emmanuel Macron, who is a candidate for the French presidency. In Spain, for example, Rivera, the leader of Ciudadanos. In Poland, Mr. Petru was the leader of a huge pro-European movement, putting 200,000 people in the streets in favor of the European Union. Well, these people are pro-European, are radical reformists. So what we are saying, and what this book are saying, I'm not alone, is that it's not enough to defend the European Union. It's saying, we need European Union. Now, first of all, it's necessary to criticize it and to say what doesn't work, and then to reform it, not by destroying it like the nationalist and the populist want, but by building up. And that said, I want to say one thing about this, about nationalism, populism. It's a very tricky thing to bid on the return of nationalism in Europe. So I heard a number of politicians say, it's all about national identity. Nationalism, it's the return of nationalism. Well, we know what nationalism has done on the European continent.
But
it has killed 20 million people.
But people forget the lessons of the past. And the problem.
It's time to come back to the lessons of the past.
How do you make a persuasive argument at this critical moment in Europe? How do people like you, make a persuasive argument that will convince the potential voters of Marine Le Pen in France, or Geert Wilders in Holland, or the Alternative for Deutschland in Germany, to say, you know what, this nationalism thing, we tried it, it didn't work, it ended up in 2 bloodbaths in the last century, let's go our way. How do you do that?
Well, I think if the lessons of history are not enough, if the 20 million
but people forget those lessons.
Okay, if that is not enough, let's talk about sovereignty. What's the sovereignty of France today? What's the sovereignty of Germany today? What's even the sovereignty of Britain today in the world of tomorrow? Well, all the big problems that we are facing are in fact transnational problems. That's the main argument. So climate change, how you solve that? You stop it at the border, saying, no, here you enter the UK, so the climate change cannot enter the UK. Is that the way to... It's not possible. The same with migration. And I'm not talking about the UK, I'm talking about Europe in general. If you don't create a European border and coast guard, do you think that Greece can manage it alone? Do you think that Italy can manage it alone? We can only do it in common.
But how can anyone believe...
Cleaning up the banks.
How can anyone believe the European Union, the European Commission, on their principled pledge to deal with migration when we have failed, when you have failed so miserably in the last 2 years to basically to spread these, 1.5 million migrants from Germany to other countries around the European Union.
Exactly, because the institutions were not in place. The European policies were not in place. Take, for example, border and Coast Guard management. It were the Italians who did the job, it were the Greeks who did the job. There was no one European border and coast management. What is the first thing to do? A proper management of your own external border. The problem are not that we have abolished internally the border. The problem is that for the moment, the Greek border, the Italian border is also a Belgian border, a German border, a French border, and we do that in common, like the Americans.
Yes, but how can you force these things, which may make sense, right? I hear the logic.
Thank you.
How can you force these things down the throats of European voters when their political instincts at the moment are going exactly in the opposite direction?
That is the misunderstanding. If we have the surveys on what people are thinking, what we see is that citizens are very critical towards the European Union, and with reason. But on the other hand, when you ask them, do you think, for example, to fight against terrorism, we need more European action? The answer is 81% of European citizens are saying yes. Do you want, for example, a better protection of your borders by Europe? 71 or 72% are saying yes. Do you want, last example, European army, so more European defense unit? More than 60% is in favor of that. So
do you want to pay for this in your nation? Do you want to take more refugees? The majority say no.
Yeah, but that's not the point.
But that is the point.
No, the point is that you have to organize it in a way that you can deal with it on the European scale. And the capabilities and the capacities, they are lacking. Take another example. For example, the fight against terrorism. Every terrorist attack, what we see, that one national intelligence service knew something that was not coordinated, not transferred as information to another country where the terrorist attack takes place. Why? Because we have no European intelligence and investigation capacity. While terrorists, I can tell you, they know no borders. For them, they travel freely inside the Union.
Okay, here's my next question to you. Has Trump not just done you a massive favor? Because if Trump is overtly trying to undermine, or in Stephen Bannon's case, destroy the European Union, finally, with the combination of Trump and Putin, you get the kind of external threats that have been lacking to concentrate European minds.
I think so. It could be 2017, also the return of a pro-European movement with a number of new politicians in countries like France, like Poland, like Spain, like Italy, even maybe Germany. You're going to see that. This is the thesis for the moment is nationalism and populism. Well, we know that the counter movement is already born, and the counter movement can only be a more united Europe as a response to that, and certainly not the trap of nationalism and populism that we got in the past.
But hang on a minute.
We invented nationalism. Let's not return to it.
Okay, but hang on. Let's also come back to planet reality. We have French elections, the first round at the end of April, the second round at the beginning of May. If
maybe also Italian elections, maybe German elections,
the Dutch elections. We've got 3 or 4 big elections coming up.
Exactly.
If Marine Le Pen becomes the president of France, you can kiss the European Union goodbye.
Will not happen.
Listen, I spoke to you last year before Brexit. You said Brexit will not happen. I bet you said that Trump wouldn't happen.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I don't.
I think you scoffed at the very suggestion.
I don't believe it. I don't believe that Le Pen will win.
How can you say never after 2016? How can you say that?
That's true all day. But I'm very confident of the fact that, especially in Europe, we're gonna see the rebirth. And a refoundation of the European Union. Because let's not...
excuse me, but what do you base that confidence on?
Because the fact that nationalism and populism is already an old movement in Europe. Trump, for example...
It's just been warmed up. It may be yesterday's porridge. It's just been warmed up.
It's not Trump that had invented European nationalism and populism. It's the opposite what happened. It are the far-right populist and nationalist movement in Europe who have inspired, in fact, Trump, Bannon, and all these people at the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. And that's the reason also when I was in America last week that I said the baddest thing that you Americans can do is to try to revive nationalism on the European continent. You have, otherwise you don't know your history. Nationalism in Europe it's a very dramatic a dramatic marriage, I should say.
Okay, so considering what you think of Donald Trump, was it a mistake, in your view, of our Prime Minister Theresa May to invite Donald Trump to a state visit, the highest honour that we can bestow on a foreign leader?
I cannot not intervene in this discussion. But if I was a UK citizen, I should have already signed
the petition.
So
you're against it? You think it's a bad idea?
If I was a UK citizen, I should have signed it, because I don't want to intervene in the debate and the discussion. But if I was a UK citizen, I should have done it. Yeah.
Okay. As you may know, Nigel Farage, your very close friend from Brussels, is
between brackets. Yeah.
Exactly, between brackets, is a presenter on this channel on LBC.
Apparently, yeah.
Apparently, yes. So, and you've not always agreed with each other. So I just want to play a little bit of audio of what you said about Nigel a few years ago. Let's just listen to this.
But Mr. Farage has the whole morning talked about salaries and biggest waste of money. Well, you know, colleagues, what I think is the biggest waste of money in the European Union of today, there's a salary we are paying to Mr. Farage. That is the biggest waste of money. Oh no, Mr. Farage, let's be honest about it. You are member of the Fishery Committee, for example, and you're never there. Never. In 2011, no attendance. In 2012, no attendance. It's fantastic what you're doing. You're coming here saying it's a scandal, the salaries that are being paid, and you pay yourself a salary without doing any labor in your own committee. That's the reality of the European Union today.
Okay, hang on a minute.
He had not the excuse to be here in LBC.
Okay, but hang on a minute. He was sitting there and listening to you talking, partly smiling, partly frowning, and we might hear from him in a minute, actually. But just first of all, do you still believe that? Do you still stick to what you said in 2012?
Why not? Yeah, he is. Yeah.
Okay.
He is still the biggest waste. Yeah.
Still the biggest waste
in the European Union.
Well,
yeah.
shall we hear from him directly? Shall we get him on the line and involve him in the conversation? Nigel.
Hello. Good morning.
Yeah. Good morning. So you just your friend Guy Verhofstadt is here. You heard him, I'm sure, in the last few minutes talking about Europe. Very candid appraisal of Europe's faults, which I'm sure you would agree with, only that he wants to use it for different ends. So
yeah, I mean, the one thing I would say to Mr. Verhofstadt is, of course, I have just helped to lead a campaign where my salary will be abolished completely, and I was the turkey that would vote for Christmas. So don't worry, Mr. Verhofstadt. Once we've left, I won't take a penny of EU salary. But I tell you what really interests me.
But you're still taking the money now, aren't you? And you're spending probably more time on LBC than you are in Brussels and Strasbourg.
Oh, no, I should be broadcasting from Brussels on Wednesday night on behalf of LBC, so I can take this show with me wherever I go. There's no problem with that.
But in terms of the European taxpayers paying your wages, you're a bit of a waste of money, aren't you?
Well, I'll tell you how it works. The more you're there, the more you cost the taxpayer. Because every day an MEP is in Brussels, he or she sign a piece of paper and they get given €300 in cash, tax-free. So the less I'm there, the less I cost the taxpayer.
So in other words, you're not spending the money that you could be spending in the pub or for having sumptuous 10-course lunches.
No, I'm missing out very badly on the wonderful lifestyle that is enjoyed by everybody in Brussels. Absolutely.
And when you are in Brussels on those rare days that you're there and you get your €300 a day, you're not spending that on big meals. You're just having a little sandwich of pret-a-porter to save money.
Actually, to be honest with you, I normally have visitors with me who I entertain and look after.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I do. And what I've found over the years is that if you bring taxpayers and voters and show them the European institutions, it makes them very angry, particularly those of an older generation who were told we were joining a common market, and they literally had no idea of the sheer size and scale of this European government that has been set up. They're appalled by the waste of money. They really are.
Okay, Guy Verhofstadt, what do you say?
I have nothing to say.
You have nothing to say.
Apparently, all the visitors were paying the meal of Nigel Farage.
So, but I mean, would you care to ask Nigel Farage whether he and Donald Trump are together trying to destroy the European Union? That seems to be the question of the day.
Yeah, it's obvious. Yeah, that's what I was saying. That's also what I have putting in my book. That is an enormous threat, and I think it's a mistake by America, by the United States of America, to bid on disintegration of the Union, because the best ally for the United States of America is a strong European Union, is a strong defense union by Europe, because a person can only walk on two legs, and also the American president. He needs an American leg at one hand, and I think he needs a European leg at the other hand. And so bidding, trying to disintegrate the European Union, revival of nationalism on the European continent, is, I think, the worst thing what can happen for our citizens and for the next generations. Yes.
Okay, Nigel, your response? Nigel Farage?
Well, yeah. I mean, what is causing extreme nationalism is the European project itself. I mean, if you're Greek now, it's virtually irrelevant who you vote for in general elections, because you're run by the EU. You're told what you can spend and what you can do. And that's why we've got a neo-Nazi party now thriving in Greece. And I must admit, I first went to Brussels wanting the UK to leave, but I thought if the rest of you want it, that's fine. And what I've seen the Danes reject a treaty, be made to vote again. I've seen the Irish twice reject a treaty, be made to vote again. I've seen the French and Dutch reject the Constitution and be ignored. And I would say this to Mr. Verhofstadt. He can argue for his United States of Europe, but actually it has no legitimacy because nobody in Europe has ever voted for it. And I do firmly believe that it's coming to an end, and we'll see a Europe of nation states, and we'll trade together, and we'll cooperate together, and we'll have reciprocal deals together, and we'll all get on much better as a Europe of sovereign nations. And I'm looking forward to that.
Okay. Nigel Farage, thank you very much indeed. Guy Verhofstadt, just one final and important question: migration.
Maybe first of all, a last thing about Brexit and the exit of other countries. What we have seen since the Brexit vote is a revival of the idea of Europe in the other countries. For example, Nexit, so the Dutch going out of the European Union, that was a drop from 50% of the people in favor of that to 30%. So also in Denmark, also in the Scandinavian countries, what we have seen is that since the Brexit, in the public opinion in Europe, people are coming back to this idea and say, yeah, maybe we can be critical towards the European Union, but we're going to not do like Britain. We will never leave Europe because that's our common history, it's our common culture, and we want to go forward with that.
I mean, one thing that strikes me is that I think in many European countries, the EU is seen as a liberation in itself from the past, either the past of fascism, in the case of Portugal and Spain, the past of communism. In Italy, perhaps it's liberation from Rome. In Germany, obviously, liberation from its own dark history. In Britain, it is not seen as a liberation. It's seen as quite the opposite. And these are fundamental, sort of tectonic, historic differences, which are arguably insurmountable. But now listen, my final question to you is this. Is it possible, is it probable that the 1.5 million British citizens currently living in the EU, in places like Spain and Portugal and France, will become bargaining chips put by you on the table in a negotiation with Britain over Brexit?
No, again, we have to find a solution for them, because this interest of these citizens, be they UK citizens, be European citizens, that is more important, I think, than the geopolitical tectonic clash that you are predicting in these negotiations.
But will
what I said in the beginning.
Can you guarantee their rights?
I repeat what I said in the beginning. I'm not starting negotiations here about their rights. But this is not about punishment. This is not about revenge. This is about a fairness and to find a fair partnership between the UK at the one hand, because they have taken a decision, the UK citizens, and we have to respect this. And at the other hand, the European Union. What we will not allow is that the European Union is further disintegrating in this negotiation process by making a deal in which you can cherry pick and you can create a better status outside the Union than the status of the members inside the Union. But
words, especially from people like you, matter enormously in this because they send signals. I will ask you again. Can you guarantee the rights of those British citizens who feel much more European than their brethren on the island who voted to quit the EU, who've lived in places like France and Spain for many years, if not decades? Can you guarantee their rights?
We, in any way, we cannot discuss it and be.
I would like a yes or a no.
No, I don't start negogations
here. It's not a negotiation. It's just it's a basic.
My basic instinct and my basic principle is very clear. I will take on board the the problems on individual citizens, and I take them more on board as a liberal than I should say the interest of countries or organizations on the European level. That's for me key. And it's not only about those people living, UK citizens living in Europe, it's also about UK citizens itself. And that's the reason why I have proposed that citizenship.
But isn't that the point precisely?
Them.
You are prepared to offer British citizens who wanted to stay in the EU certain rights and guarantees, but you're not prepared to do the same for British citizens who live in
No. All this,
Spain
I didn't say that. I say we're going to take on board their interest, we're going to take on board their rights, and it's going to be done in reciprocity. That's also very clear. Reciprocity means if on the one hand you want a good treatment for those living on the continent, it will be the same for those Europeans living in Britain. Also, they need a fair treatment. Reciprocity, reciprocity, reciprocity.
Well, on that note, on that consensual note, thank you very much. The book is called Europe's Last Chance. The author is Guy Verhofstadt. You'll be hearing an awful lot more from Guy Verhofstadt in the next few years as the divorce proceedings get underway. Thank you very much for coming into the studio. The time is now 10:34. The news with Simon Conway.
The European Parliament's chief Brexit negotiator has told LBC it would be suicide to give Britain a better deal outside the EU than for members inside.
Theresa May have made it very clear. She wants to go out of the European Union, on the single market, or the customs union, of the European Court.